when you show up to a knife fight and you win, I mean, be prepared for people to be
impacted,
intimidated, impacted by your winning that knife fight. I mean,
100.
That's what it is. So I mean,
yes. I think that's so right. I mean, in that moment, I always get confronted with these questions, and after I took a beat, my answer was like, we got to flip the script. Hey everyone, welcome to the Dia Bondi Show, a big, huge podcast for your goals. I'm Dia Bondi. I'm so happy to have you here with me and Baby A.
Hey.
Hey, how are you today, Baby A?
Good. I'm swaying a little bit, imagining that the music is playing, because we record this without the music and I put it in post.
That's
but
right.
I think it would be fun to do the intro with the music sometime.
You know, we should do that just to like play ourselves in and get it feeling right.
On the live episode, we had the music.
We did. That was kind of fun. And I loved how you opened it. I think that was episode 10, everyone, if you want to listen to it. You were like, welcome, everybody. You did the whole thing. Like there was a curtain that you were going to pull open with. Yeah, it was great. It was super fun. What are you doing today?
Just hanging out. Kat has the day off. So we hung out with a friend of hers earlier. And then we're just, I don't know, go for a walk or something.
I knew when I called you, I was like, or when I was like, hey, you want to jump on and record our next episode? And it was a Friday. I was like, wait, that's Kat's no meeting Fridays. I know you guys usually do stuff.
Right.
So thanks for carving it out.
No problem.
My Friday is going to be full of shopping for my kids. So we're at the end of COVID. It's been the first week of a maskless situation here in California. I was just coming up the stairs into the office today, and I did not, for the first time, did not put a mask on. I'm vaccinated, did not put a mask on. Saw somebody at the top of the stairs, and we both looked at each other like, is this all right? And then we were like, well, I guess, and then, it feels super different.
Yeah.
Super different. But today we're going to be spending time in the evening time. It's been all this year in COVID, and my kids right now at the time of recording, I have a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, almost 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. And, everybody's been hanging out this whole year in what my husband would call day jammies. And so we're going to a we're going to a bar mitzvah next week. And I was like, my kids have grown over this last year, so nobody's pants fit, nobody's shirts fit, all the dresses are too short. So we get to go shopping.
You got to get them some new clothes.
We do. We got to go shopping for, something kind of fancy pants, not day jammies.
That's cool. Kat and I have been doing a thing lately where if we go out to do anything, we dress up.
Right.
So we just went to the grocery store yesterday and we put on these outfits and we're like, oh, these are great. So we took some photos. Yeah. We did a little photo sesh in our summer outfits.
Right.
And it's funny.
Feels good to get dressed.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, cool. Well, sounds like we are both enjoying putting on actual, wear out and about clothing.
Yeah. Outside clothes or regular clothes or something. Although the inside clothes have become the regular clothes.
Right. The day jammies, though, that don't need to be, it doesn't need to be the same 4 sets of day jammies. So I guess what it is just we're rediscovering our wardrobes.
So we have a review that we'd like to shout out. Evangeline Etc. writes on an Apple Podcast review, Dia is a rare combination of savvy and empathetic. Highly recommended.
Oh, so nice. Savvy and empathetic. It's,
I get that.
Yeah, thanks. And are they opposites? Is it weird to be savvy and empathetic?
No, but I think that sometimes people who are seen as very savvy are looked at as narcissistic or sociopathic,
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Evangeline, etc. is she's a rare combination of savvy and not narcissistic.
I think that's what that means.
I think that's a win for me.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, so thank you, Evangeline, etc., for your lovely review.
And sorry I didn't mean to put words in your mouth. There.
Thank you so much for taking time to write a review. It makes a humongous difference to the show. For any of you listening, to rate and review the show. And for sure, this is usually the part that Arthur does, but look what I just did. I totally just elbowed him out of the way, and now I'm doing it. Makes a huge difference to rate and review the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Share it with your friends. And if you have a question you want me to address or rap out for you or answer or coach even asynchronously for you, you can call us at the show. Arthur, can you remind me of what the number is?
Yeah, it's 341-333-2997. And, it's fitting that you would take that line from me this week because you did this entire interview that we're about to tee up without me.
I did. I took total advantage of it. And first, I want to say, I had an opportunity to capture this conversation, and I just kind of went for it, and then pinged you back and said, "Hey, I just recorded a conversation. I want to flip into a podcast, and I'm so happy that we have the chance to do that." I'm going to talk to you all about who this person is that we have on the show, and then why it is I wanted to capture the conversation that we ended up capturing. Cool?
Yeah, do it.
So you're going to listen to a conversation I recorded a few weeks ago with Shermin Kruse. Shermin Kruse is a consultant and attorney and adjunct law professor. She's a TEDx producer and a thought leader with a super long history of civic engagement. She is CEO of My Reality Cubed. She provides organizational and management consulting and training for Fortune 500 companies. And she's a producer of thought leadership events, including TEDx in the Chicago area. And she is adjunct professor at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law. She's a speaker and an author also of a best-selling novel, Butterfly Stitching, which is inspired by the true experiences of herself and other women in her family before and after the Iranian Revolution. Super dynamic history she has. She's featured in a variety of media and was named the 2018 Woman Extraordinaire by the International Women Associates and one of Chicago's most influential women by the Chicago Business Journal. She is founder of the Pasfarda Arts and Cultural Exchange, a director of the ACLU of Illinois, and a director of the International Refugee Center called Refuge. And she's a founding member of the Chicago Council for the American Writers Museum. This woman is busy.
Yeah, wow.
Doing things, moving things, advancing things, impacting things across the board.
Amazing. Well, let's listen to your conversation.
So let me tee it up for you guys. So here's the thing. The conversation that she and I had was the second conversation that we'd ever had, but I had to just record it for all of you. We met through a platform called The Juggle. You can look it up online. I think it's Juggl. And we ended up going in this conversation where we wanted, but the conversation started with this. I wanted to talk through the problem of women getting punished for advocating and negotiating for themselves. Her point of view, I wanted to get her point of view and what she thinks we can do about that. I've spent the last couple of years since Project Ask Like an Auctioneer launched, listening to women say, I want to ask for more, but I'm afraid of the backlash. And it's an ongoing question. What about the backlash? So this is something that shows up a lot in conversation. And there is, in fact, research that she shared with me, which we'll link in the show notes, that women are, in fact, punished for going to the mat for themselves. This research is a little bit old when you find it, but it's worth looking at, I think. So that's kind of it for the tee up. I hope so much you enjoy this conversation, and thank you so much, Arthur, for making it all work for us.
No problem.
Yeah, hi, it's Dia. Can you hear me?
There. Yeah, I can hear you.
I think that'll sound a little better.
Yeah, okay. Awesome.
Okay, cool.
So when I first immigrated to Canada, I didn't speak any English, obviously, but I also didn't speak any French, and it's a bilingual country. So I was trained in both languages simultaneously, but my French is just so awful because I really abandoned it after a few years. So I speak just enough French to pretend like I speak French and sound cool at
That's good.
cocktail parties.
That's cool.
So so I was thinking, why not just try to pick up French, even a little bit, even just, how hard could it be? I mean, I'm not trying to be a fluent French speaker, but if you learn 100 words a year, in 3 years, you have as many words as a 3-year-old or
Is it working? Are you getting it?
The French?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess. I guess I'm not like super dedicated,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
one of the like the 5,000 things. You know how it goes.
Totally, totally. Well, listen, I'm
Yeah.
so stoked to have you in conversation with me today because when we met like 5 seconds ago. We met last week on the conversation with the juggle.
This is
We were
literally our
just,
second
I
conversation.
know,
Yeah.
so great. We were like, and you know, when we were having conversation, we were just like barely chipping the tip of this iceberg that makes me crazy around
Yeah.
women asking for more and trying to get it, and then the friggin' backlash conversation and
Right.
how, you know, we get punished for it, and like, what are we supposed to do about that? And I had a feeling you would have a point of view about that because you did cite some research that is real, like backlash is real. You know,
Yes.
getting punished for advocating for ourselves is real. And I think I have an unpopular approach to it, but I was super curious, like, what is it? So when women go to advocate for themselves, Shermin, like, and how do there's this rock and a hard place thing we're facing. How do we unstick that?
Yeah. I just think it's such a difficult question to answer because in some ways it's so context dependent. So I'll just, I would love to hear your unpopular opinions. I think a lot of it has to do with what industry you're in, how senior you are makes a really, really big difference. I mean, if you're just a kid, junior, you have a lot less power and therefore a lot fewer capabilities. And if you're more senior, you can take a bigger hit for yourself and for others. And then, what the company culture is, et cetera.
And you're
But
talking, and you're referencing, you know, asking for more and getting it, advocating for yourself in an organization. There's also a whole bank of, you know, women in entrepreneurship, self-employed folks, you know, experts like me who don't work inside of that system, but we're not free of a system, you know?
I think that's right. I still think it's sector dependent and experience dependent, right? So I mean, if Sheryl Sandberg is out there raising VC funds, it's going to be really different than a 25-year-old, minority female raising funds. I was just actually talking to a friend of mine the other day who's an entrepreneur, and she was saying that there's two questions that she gets asked. She advises a lot of young women on entrepreneurship and VC funding, and she was saying there's two questions she gets asked more than any other questions. Question number one is how do you raise money, and question number two is how do you hide your baby bump? She's pregnant with her fifth, and and it's real. These are real questions, and young women aren't asking them because they're defeatist. They're asking them because they know they're not going to get the money, or they're significantly less likely to get the money if they're showing a baby bump, because the VC is going to think, well, you're going to be gone in a few months, and naturally assume their priorities will realign once the baby comes, and so they just won't fund them. So these are very, very realistic. These are real things. They're not made up in their head. I love talking about taking a seat at the table and putting yourself out there, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to do that, but we also have to acknowledge that the system is rigged against us. And when we do that, we're going to have a different experience than we would if we were men.
Super interesting. So I was teaching a workshop, it's probably like 2 years ago, early days of Project Ask Like an Auctioneer. And I teach a class called Your Most Powerful Ask Live. And one woman raised her hand and she was like, okay, so it was such a convoluted question. It was something like, how do you deal with the outcome of getting what you want? And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, what are you talking about? Well, she was in a situation where she was outside of a tech company, got recruited in, negotiated hard for herself, did a great job. And then she was like, yes, patting herself on the back. When she showed up, folks knew about it. They knew that she had advocated for herself in that way, and they were just microaggressioning her right and left about it. Oh, well, we heard you're a really tough cookie, and we heard you're like kind of doing these sort of weird digs at her. And she was like, okay, how do I live with this now that I got what I wanted? I won. And now there's this, and it wasn't even backlash or anything that was like actually going to hurt her materially in a really like, visible way, but it was like hurting her confidence. It was just destabilizing for her. And So, and that was just coming from peers too.
So what did you tell her? Suck it up, Buttercup?
No, my jam
I
is
want to
like,
hear about this unpopular opinion. I want to know what it is. I'm very curious. I will say to some extent, it's certainly not the advice I would give. Suck it up, Buttercup. I was kidding, obviously. But having said that, when you show up to a knife fight and you win, I mean, be prepared for people to be
impacted,
intimidated, impacted by your winning that knife fight. I mean,
100.
that's what it is. So I mean,
yes. I think that's so right. I mean, in that moment, I always get confronted with these questions and I'm like, I want women to advocate. And then they have this thing they have to deal with. And I always have to be like, okay, Dia, answer this in integrity with what the impact that I'm trying to have in the world. And after I took a beat, my answer was like, we got to flip the script. So instead of apologizing, because I think she felt a temptation to apologize for it or to minimize it or to be like, oh no, it wasn't that big of a deal, or ha ha ha, blow it, like to make it small. And I was like, what if we flip the script? To your point, so much of this is so contextual, right? Like there are studies and then there's your individual situation that has to take into context the relationship and, all the things that are at play in your ballpark. And I was like, let's flip the script. Instead of apologizing and making it small, what if you made it big and an asset to say, you're right, I did. And I'm pretty good at negotiating. So if you need any help, she was a lawyer, by the way, in an internal legal, on an internal legal team. She was like, and if you need any help crafting any negotiations you have upcoming, please feel free to tap me. I'd happy to thought partner with you. Yeah. So one of my strategies in all of this stuff is to go like, okay, if we were to flip the script and put power into something that isn't about putting power on someone or dominating to shut them up, but to actually use that as momentum and to turn something that looks like a liability into an asset, not just for you, but for the people that you can help support and work with around you. Is there a path for that? So that was my answer.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that. I think that can work. And certainly it's probably their best bet. Some people aren't comfortable though. I mean, because they might have done a great job in that negotiation and advocated for themselves, but that's not necessarily how they view themselves. And it's not how they want others to view themselves. And it's one thing to be aggressive in that one-off. Now you're part of that organization. And now you have to actually interface and interact and build relationships with these people for the long term. And you feel like you've come in with the deck sort of stacked against you. Do you mind if you walk with me to the door to get my lunch?
No.
Awesome. We're just going to walk. Just so everybody knows who's watching this was not a planned podcast. I was just going to
don't worry.
The
Dia Bondi show is audio only. So you are super protected.
Oh, awesome. All right.
That's in great shape.
Even better. But for those who can't see, the weather outside is delightful.
In Chicago, correct?
Yes, in Chicago. It's a beautiful rainy day. The trees are brighter than they would ordinarily be. So I mean, so that's the issue, right? I mean, yes, 100%. And it is. And by the way, that's not a play. Like it actually is an asset. This woman actually did negotiate very, very well. And she is very good at it. And they should utilize those skills. Having said that, it doesn't change the fact that most likely her experience was negative coming into the organization, because she's coming to you likely days, if not months, maybe even years after that event took place, and still asking you how to deal with it because it didn't go well.
It was actually recent, and it wasn't like it was one of these things where there's these like light little stings that she was getting, and she'd have been on the team, I feel like only not that long, couple of months maybe. I mean, to be fair, like we have to look at, my strategy around flipping the script has always got to be like, what's the pathway? And is it actually aligned to who you are? Like, is it true for you? If she in live, it was pre-COVID, so we were live in the room. If she was like giving me a funny face when I was hearing that, I was like, okay, so what is true for you? How do you use this in a way that is aligned to the impact you want to have in the world? I'm going to say the word reputation that you want to have in your organization, and your goals and plans for where you want to go when you're there. So it all has to work in alignment. It can't be an artificial script flipping. But the approach to me around when women hit backlash, or they have a little bump, or they have, to your point, like they have to deal with the repercussions of winning the knife fight. like, how do we turn that into power and not just try to make it like disappear?
I love that.
That's my first approach at it. And then if we can't find a path, there's, we find something else.
I love that. I mean, what that implies, though, what it requires is for the female herself to actually identify with that characterization of herself.
Beautiful.
So,
beautiful. Yes.
do you feel comfortable being a hard ass? Do you feel, I mean, maybe it sounds good on paper, but now that you're in an organizational environment, does it bother you that people view you that way? I mean, and what do you think that means? Why is it a bad thing? Why does it bother you? To what extent does it conflict with the way in which you see yourself? And so, yeah, so I mean, I for those who can't see, Dia's nodding right now. So I'm going to shoot it over to her and see what it is she's trying to say. Well, it's hard with me, man. You can't get a word in edgewise. You've got to jump in.
I love it. I think that this thing about identity and identifying these characteristics, seeing ourselves as powerful in ways, or having a power, in ways that we haven't seen or taken on before, is an interesting question. As we go advocate for ourselves, as we try and ask for more and get it, as we stand in a new room or sit at a new table, that like when we can see ourselves as such, does that change what we do? Does that impact what we say yes to as we level up, or ingest the things we're getting because we're sitting at that table, standing in that room, advocating for ourselves, like integrating that new frontier that we've created for ourselves into who we are,
and being and liking that person. And so the reality is, this is what they say about gender bias being ingrained and it being in all of us, including ourselves. We also don't like that image of ourselves. So why should we expect others to like that image of ourselves?
So interesting.
I mean, it's yes, right? And it's, it's implicit. And it's implicit in all of us. It's implicit in women and men, vis-a-vis other women, other men, and also in ourselves. And so I think a lot of it is just being comfortable owning that. You were in a knife fight. You played in the big leagues and you won. So good for you. That's who you are. And it's not all that you are, right? You're also, I'm sure, very kind, very compassionate. I'm sure you're a great leader. You're a great team player.
But when it's time to have a knife fight.
Right. So, I mean, the particular challenge about that particular situation is that she was sort of an opponent previously, but now she's on their same team, right?
Beautiful. So, yes. That's so good.
So it's that switch of, well, yeah, you don't want to be on the other side of the table from me, but we don't have to be that way now. We're colleagues,
Oh my God. That's so
but it makes
good.
It makes it hard, right? And the reality is that in life, you're still, obviously you're part of the same team, and she went in-house. You said she was a lawyer. She went in-house somewhere. So she's probably part of a large in-house legal staff, interfacing with executives, et cetera. She probably also works with outside counsel, blah, 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 all of that. And there's going to be things she's going to continue to need to negotiate internally, who uses the microwave first, what her vacation time is, or where the next bonus or salary is coming from. All of those things, big and small, are going to keep happening. But at the end of the day, there is a sort of a dogmatic shift, right? A perspective shift. Now you're part of this team, whereas previously you were on the outside. And that's hard. It's hard to adopt that.
It is. It's like, that's what I was saying, that like accepting, seeing ourselves in a new way as a way to integrating that identity and identifying, some assets that you have, and then putting them to work for yourself and for the folks that are on your team. Yeah. What I love too about this naming of, I was on the other side of the table. Now I'm on your same side of the table. I feel like there's moments where we can signal. Like, maybe this is just hypothetical, but maybe those little stings she was getting, those little punishments, the little social punishments she was getting as an outcome of advocating for herself, was folks not knowing what side she was on, like if she was gonna still be protecting herself or if she was gonna, right? But for her to flip the script to say, yes, that is powerful. I am powerful in that way, and I can lend you that. I am now on your side of the table. As like that has impact, I think, when we can signal to the world, to the teams, to the collaborators that we work with, the partners that we engage with, to say like, hey, baby, I am on your side. I may win a knife fight, but we're on the same team right now. So I can both, like I think we can be proactive that way. And, that's my jam, like, direct and, and I don't know if we could say aggressive, but maybe teetering on aggressive. But I like that signaling.
Right? Yes, strategic. I mean, you're coming at it from, I don't know that it's, I mean, I guess you could say aggressive. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive in this context, but it's not, you're just telling this person to negotiate the best deal they can get that they're worth. And when they come into the environment, to the extent they get backlash, to have a strategic approach toward how that's going to work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just common sense. I mean, one of the things though, that we have to note is that, men are more aggressive, and we don't necessarily mind that in them the same way that we mind it in ourselves. And so we stand out more when we act that way, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I will say also, it's not a bad thing to not be aggressive and just be strategically aligned, and just do the right thing and figure out how to move all the pieces. One of my favorite fictional characters of all time is Miranda from The Devil Wears Prada, played by Meryl Streep, supposed to be Anna Wintour. In that entire movie, from beginning to end, you're terrified of this person. She never once raises her voice. In fact, she barely speaks above a whisper. And yet she dominates the room with power. She doesn't pound her fist on the floor or scream or shout or walk out. She just plays everybody. And she knows what... Yes.
To me, that's playing high all the time.
Yeah. Playing high all the time. That's what works for her, right? And so, and the reality is that's authentic to her, and she's become comfortable with that vision and image of herself, and that's how she got to where she is. So, yeah.
So this, I was talking to a colleague a couple of weeks ago, and she was citing, a dude who was keynoting at an event that she was at. Well-known dude, and he was citing, that women get punished for advocating for themselves, and his solution was just that they shouldn't do it. And I'm, and so that is the heart of the thing, is like, how do we break that log jam? And what we've been talking about so far is all the stuff in and around that, but I'm constantly in this thing of like, if we get punished for doing the very thing that may advance us, that we tell women to do, how do we do that in a way, like the answer cannot be don't do it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so complicated. It's so hard for me to advise young women. For instance, I've known young women who were sexually harassed, who filed the lawsuit, and who were fired, and it destroyed their career. So what do you tell people? Do you tell them, oh, gee, don't file a lawsuit because you could get fired and you could ruin your career? That's not advice that you can give. It is a realistic possibility. Yes. And I think that when you make decisions, you need to be aware and move with as much integrity as possible. And this is why I think that it's always about the larger picture. It's always about, what are your internal alliances? What are your external alliances? As you move forward, what are the internal functionalities? What are the various ways in which you could deal with this situation? You absolutely should not remain the victim of harassment. But let's think very thoughtfully and strategically about how you respond to this situation. And it's very, very difficult, and recognizing the repercussions. Now, I will say though, that sometimes I meet women who are senior, and they're in institutions where there would never be a repercussion. And so they have no experience with that. And so for them, it's absurd that anybody would do anything other than just report it and be super aggressive, because that's the institution where they were sort of like raised and brought up. It's just not the case for everybody. But we need to think very mindfully about the individual and what the individual goes through. We also need to think very mindfully about the collective. what happens if we as individuals remain silent, right? So let's acknowledge the fact that there might be repercussions and do a cost benefit analysis. What happens collectively if we all, game theory 101, right? What happens collectively if we all only act for our individual best interests? And again, it's very difficult to tell a young female you need to take one for the team, right? Who is at the beginning of her career. Nevertheless, these are, once again, these are realities. This is what it is to be a victim. You've been put in this incredibly difficult position. And now you have to figure out how to survive and how to move forward, and from taking from that, how to thrive. These are super complex. And really the reality is that when it comes to negotiation and advocating, particularly in the law, there should be much more allowance. I mean, it's truly absurd that there would be microaggressions against an in-house counsel lawyer for negotiating the best thing that she could negotiate. I mean, it's insane, right? It's completely backwards. Obviously, she was within the range of acceptable,
They
salary.
said yes. They said yes.
And she's literally your lawyer now. So, I mean, I don't literally, that's what she's going to be doing. So it's absurd, right? It's very, very, it goes against self-interest. And that's why I think it's always important to include men in these conversations too. To include men as allies, to include leadership as allies, and to get them to engage. What are they doing wrong, right? She can do this, that, and the other thing. She can strategically realign. She can do this, she can do that. What about them? Who's talking to them? Who's advising them? Who's telling them to eat it? I mean, what is that, right? And so it's so it's beyond upsetting to me. I mean, again, we have to talk to her because she's in the situation and she needs the best advice that she can get to figure her way out. We need to be talking to them too, though.
Yeah, totally. One of the things that I so in the work that I do, I'm always having a conversation with women about something she wants to ask for. And sometimes it's, in our earlier conversations, I talked about the 4 pillars I notice most of the asks fall into. And, I see them falling into like money, influence, authority, and balance. And these are strategic asks to help them get closer to their goals based on the framework that I use. And one of the questions that I think is really or I've seen be really powerful is, what are you going to do if you get a no? What are you going to, women ask me all the time, but what do I do if I get a no? And I don't have an answer. I only have another question, which is, great question. What are you going to do? And I have had women say to me with tears in their eyes and, a heavy heart that they're going to leave their role, or they're going to move the job, or they're going to close the business, or they get there's both pain in experiencing ahead of time the loss that you may have if you can't get the thing that you need to move toward your goals. And at the same time, there's some freedom in really looking at and making some decisions for yourself about what to do when it doesn't, quote unquote, work out. I had one conversation with a woman a couple of weeks ago where, we just had to sit together and let her have some tears about the fact that she would have to walk away from a thing that she wanted, because she wasn't going to, if she couldn't get it in the situation she was in, she would go find another situation where she could get it. And walking away again had some heartbreak. It was a beautiful conversation, how she talked about her decision to say, if I can't get it here, I'm going to recognize that I can't get it here and I'm going to get it somewhere else. And there's some sadness there, but it is like dealing with the repercussions of winning the knife fight. There's also this question of recognizing that sometimes we can't get the people in front of us or the system in front of us to get off the fence, to get out of the way, to resource the thing that matters to us in our lives and our goals and our careers and our businesses, and that we have to move on or move away. And there's, I'm curious what your thoughts are about confronting that and letting ourselves look at that and have sadness, and then not have that trap us, but a way to let us move on.
So I love this so much, Dia. I think not only do we need to let ourselves think that way, I think we have to train each other to think that way. This is just algorithmic thinking. This is playing chess or war games, or, if A, then B, if B, then C, if not B, then how do we get to C? And literally just strategizing through the various potential outcomes. What sometimes gets us is, as we sit through and think through the various outcomes, we attribute undue weight to particular possibilities because of fear and anxiety. So maybe there's only a 5% chance that someone's going to say no, but you're so afraid of that no. You're so afraid of it that in your head, it's at least a 50-50 shot.
Beautiful.
Right?
Beautiful. Yes.
It's so hard to do that, to have that objectivity. And really, I say always think like a general. Think like a general about to march your army into battle, or think like a chess player, and really try to evaluate. And this is also why we need advisors, right? So many of us now, like Dia yourself, you're such a phenomenal advisor. So many of us also, in addition to women like Dia who can advise you, and be your consultant, there's also, friends we have in our lives, support groups we have in our lives. We're all now talking about this like personal board of advisors. This is all the rage now, where everyone, I like to call it my personal Knights of the Round Table. Just folks that are less invested, right? It's not my mom, it's not my best friend, it's not my husband. It's somebody who cares about me but isn't as directly invested and can see the situation slightly more objectively. But really, I mean, it's so great, Dia, that you provide these types of services, because you can see the situation very objectively, because you don't have a personal relationship with the women that you advise. And it is really helpful. This is why we need consultants. I mean, this is why we need leadership coaches. And this is why we need people like you. But even if somebody doesn't have those resources, just sort of training themselves to detach, to evaluate, to seek advice, etc.
Yeah, there's this interesting balance. I noticed that like we want to raise the stakes of the things that we want for ourselves high enough that we will stand up and go through the difficulty of pursuing them because they are important to us, but then lower the stakes enough of any one negotiation so that we can see past it and it doesn't trap us.
I love that. That's really profound, and it's spot on. Wow, that's really visually provocative. Yeah, I love that. I wonder if there's a great visual that would go along with that.
That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we can. I would like to commission an artist to paint that painting.
Shermin, I'm so glad you took time to talk to me today, and that we had this on the books to talk and connect anyway. And I was like, wait, I know we're going to talk about something juicy, so let's just record it and put it up on the Dia Bondi show. So it's so awesome to have you. I love this.
Thank you. This is amazing. Normally, I just ask people what their favorite brand of tequila is on a first meeting. So this is definitely a little bit different.
So what is the thing that people can engage with you? How do folks engage with you? You've got a TEDx up. You produce when we've done the introduction leading up to our conversation, but like, where do people find you and what can they do with you?
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is, I'm honestly and authentically much more interested in what you do, and that's why I'm here. I do run a consulting firm. I do a ton of leadership consulting and change management work. I do also, yes, produce TED Talks. So if you think you've got a great idea for a TED Talk, feel free to hit me up. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can also go to www.myrealitycubed.com if you are interested in the consulting services. It's my honor and privilege, though, to be here and listen to your perspective, Dia. I love that. And I love asking like an auctioneer. It's and I love that that's one of your hobbies, by the way, which is something that I found out about you, because I can't understand what the hell the people are saying when they
don't worry. I don't have I don't have a cowboy chant, just so you know, because at a fundraising auction, there are people in the house that if I used a chant like that, nobody would bid at all because nobody would know where we are. So yeah, talk about lowering the stakes. I lowered the stakes for myself right off the bat and said, I will not have a chant like that, but I'll do some other things that are fun and help you bid and raise your paddles and raise money for the organizations we care about.
Phenomenal. Sounds great. It was such a pleasure to be on. I apologize to the listeners. I do have to get off. I have another call to jump onto, but this was so great.
You're amazing, Shermin. This is great. I'm going to circle back with you because I got a TEDx in me. I do.
I know you do. Yeah.
Okay. Have a great rest of your day. And I feel like we are connected right here. Like I'm going to continue to haunt you.
Sounds great. I have lots of ghosts in my house. And one time somebody told me that there's a an archangel that follows me everywhere I go. Honestly, I'm an atheist, so I don't even know what this person is talking about. But as far as other random people are concerned, I'm fine with hauntings. Bring it on, baby.
Okay. Good.
Talk
Bye.
to you later, Dia.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So that was it. It was definitely like off to the races from the beginning to the end. And I hope that all of you got something out of this conversation like I did, at least an energetic dose of what we could do to help manage through the potential of backlash that we either perceive or actually experience in the workplace and in the world when we go to advocate for ourselves, when we go to ask for more so we can get more of what we need to reach our goals faster.
Well, everybody, put on your outside clothes and get on out there.
This podcast is a production of Diabani Communications, scored, mixed, and produced by Baby A. You can like, share, rate, and subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. If you would like my mom, Diabani, to answer any questions about how to make your next big move, call us and leave your question at 341-333-2997. Thanks for listening.